You ever drive through a small town at night and feel watched? Not by the people, not even by the cars passing by it, there are any, but by the town itself. The air feels heavier there, the quiet is thicker, and the streetlights seem to flicker at just the wrong time, like they're warning you to leave. The buildings all look the same, their windows black and hollow, as if the whole place has been holding its breath for decades, waiting for someone new to make the wrong turn. There's one road like that I've heard about. The locals won't even say its name out loud, not after dark. Travelers swear that if you drive down it past midnight, you'll see her just standing there, barefoot, in the middle of the asphalt. She doesn't move, she doesn't wave. She just stares at you with eyes that are too dark to be human. And if you roll down your window, you'll hear her whisper your name, even if you've never been here before. Most people keep driving, praying their car doesn't stall before they get to the other side. But a few stop. Maybe they're curious, maybe they think she needs help. And those are the ones no one ever sees again. Not in the town, not on the news. Nowhere. If you think you can handle the stories towns like this, try to bury your places. Real people, and the horrors they'll never put in a tourist brochure. Subscribe to Farcical Fears. We'll take you there, but you'll wish we hadn't. Let's move to our first story. In a small, quiet town nestled deep in the heart of New England, there stood an old, abandoned house that had earned a sinister reputation over the years. Locals called it the Hawthorne House, a once grand Victorian mansion that had deteriorated into a crumbling relic of the past. Its darkened windows stared out like hollow eyes, and its sagging porch creaked eerily whenever the wind blew through the skeletal trees surrounding it. No one dared to go near it except for a few brave souls who claimed to have encountered something truly disturbing inside its walls. The origins of the Hawthorne House date back over a century, built by a wealthy merchant named Elias Hawthorne. The house was known for its elaborate architecture, intricate woodwork, and sprawling gardens that once bloomed with vibrant roses and lilacs. But the charm faded quickly after the Hawthorne family tragedy. In 1912, Elias's wife, Margaret, vanished mysteriously, followed soon after by their 2 children, who were found dead in the nearby woods under baffling circumstances. Elias himself disappeared without a trace shortly after, leaving the house empty and cursed in the eyes of the townspeople. Over the decades, the house sat neglected, swallowed by weeds and shadowed by wild vines. Strange rumors spread. Some said you could hear children laughing when no one was around. Others claimed to have seen shadowy figures in the windows late at night. But it was the accounts of those who ventured inside that truly disturbed the town. One such account was told by a man named Tom Reynolds, a local historian fascinated by the house's dark past. Driven by curiosity, Tom decided to explore the Hawthorne House one chilly October evening. Armed with only a flashlight and a tape recorder, he stepped over the rotting threshold and into the musty interior. The air inside was thick with dust and the unmistakable scent of decay. As Tom moved through the rooms, the floorboards groaned beneath his feet, and his flashlight flickered erratically, as if struggling against an unseen force. What happened next still chills those who have heard his story. As Tom entered the dining room, he noticed the heavy oak table was set as if for a meal plate, dusty but intact. Tarnished silverware arranged neatly, and a faded centerpiece of dried flowers. It was as if time had frozen in that moment. Suddenly, the temperature dropped sharply, and Tom's breath became visible in the air. His tape recorder crackled with static, then faint whispers began to seep through the noise. Tom tried to follow the whispers, which seemed to call his name, leading him toward the staircase. Each step he took felt heavier, and the walls appeared to close in around him. At the top of the stairs, he found a small bedroom with peeling wallpaper and a cracked mirror. In the mirror's reflection, Tom saw the faint outline of a woman in a tattered dress standing behind him. He spun around, but the room was empty. When he turned back, the woman's reflection was gone. Terrified, Tom hurried back downstairs, but the house seemed to have changed. The front door, which he was sure had been unlocked when he entered, was now sealed tight, with no visible handle. Panicked, he searched for another exit, but every window was barred by rusted iron grills. And the room seemed to shift, as if the house itself was alive and unwilling to let him go. Hours later, Tom was found collapsed in the garden by a passing couple. He was disoriented, covered in scratches, and unable to explain what had happened inside. His tape recorder was missing, and when the police searched the house, they found no sign of his presence beyond the faint footprints on the muddy floor. Tom never returned to the Hawthorne house, but he warned everyone that something malevolent lingered there, feeding on fear and despair. Over the years, other encounters added to the house's dark legend. A group of teenagers who dared to spend the night inside reported waking to cold hands gripping their ankles and ghostly children's laughter echoing through the halls. A paranormal investigator once captured a chilling image on infrared camera, an indistinct figure hovering near the staircase, its face twisted in silent anguish. Neighbors claimed to hear the tolling of an old grandfather clock at midnight. Despite the house having no working clock for decades, experts who studied the house suggested that the site was a nexus of intense spiritual energy, possibly linked to the tragic deaths of the Hawthorne family. Some hypothesized that the souls trapped within the walls were caught in a never-ending loop of torment, unable to move on. Others believed the house was cursed by dark rituals performed by Elias Hawthorne, in a desperate attempt to communicate with his lost family, inadvertently binding their spirits to the house forever, perhaps. The most disturbing part of the story came from a man named Joseph Miller, a contractor hired to clean and restore the Hawthorne house in the early 2000s. Joseph was skeptical about the supernatural and saw the project as a chance to turn the property into a profitable bed and breakfast. However, his experience quickly shattered his disbelief. On his first night inside the house alone, Joseph heard persistent knocking coming from the basement door, though he was certain it was locked. When he descended to investigate, he found the basement filled with a heavy, suffocating darkness. His flashlight flickered and died, plunging him into pitch black. In that void, Joseph felt a presence press against him, cold and overwhelming. He scrambled back upstairs, but the sensation of being watched never left. Joseph reported strange occurrences throughout his weeks working, their tools disappearing, unexplainable cold spots, and the sensation of being followed by unseen eyes. One evening, as he was packing to leave, he found a set of old, blood-stained letters hidden beneath the floorboards. The letters revealed a horrifying secret. Elias Hawthorne had been practicing occult rituals to resurrect his family. Sacrifices that required innocent blood. The tragic deaths had been more than accidents, they were dark acts, fueled by madness and despair. After that discovery, Joseph abandoned the restoration and never returned. The Hawthorne house remains vacant to this day, a silent monument to grief and evil. Locals avoid its shadow, and the town council has repeatedly declined proposals to demolish it, fearing the curse might spread. The disturbing story of the Hawthorne house continues to haunt those who dare to listen. It stands as a grim reminder that some places are best left alone, where sorrow and darkness intertwine, and restless spirits whisper of horrors too terrible to face. And somewhere, behind those broken windows, the house waits, patient and hungry, for the next soul to wander inside. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, and want to hear more true, disturbing horror stories from forgotten places, make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. You never know what dark secrets lie hidden just beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. The Hawthorne house's dark presence didn't fade with time. In the 1970s, the Carter family moved in, hoping to breathe new life into the mansion, but their hope quickly turned to terror. Their youngest daughter, Emily, spoke of other family spirits who whispered from the walls. Soon after, their son Danny disappeared without a trace while playing in the basement. The family fled, convinced the house had taken him. Over the years, the house attracted paranormal investigators and thrill-seekers alike. One team captured a ghostly figure, a woman in anguish, in camera, before the video feed was cut by a chilling message smeared on the wall. "Leave now, or become one with us." Many who ventured inside experienced sudden cold spots, shadowy figures, and unsettling whispers calling their names. A young couple live streaming their exploration vanished, their last footage filled with screams and pleas to stay forever. Efforts to demolish the house failed under mysterious circumstances, reinforcing the belief that the house itself was alive and unwilling to be destroyed. Locals avoid the house, especially at night, when sorrowful cries of a grieving mother are said to echo through the broken windows. The Hawthorne house remains a dark monument to tragedy and evil, waiting patiently for its next visitor to become part of its haunted legacy. If you want to hear more true, disturbing horror stories from forgotten places like this, subscribe and turn on notifications. Some stories refuse to stay buried and some houses never let go. Let's move to our second story, in the quiet town of Millbridge. Nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, stood an old, decrepit house that had long been the source of unease and whispered rumors. Known as the Grayson House, it was infamous among locals for the dark history it carried and the terrifying experiences of those who dared cross its threshold. Unlike grand mansions or isolated cabins, the Grayson House was an ordinary-looking two-story home with faded white paint and a sagging porch blending into the row of houses on Maple Street. Yet, beneath its unassuming exterior lay a story so disturbing that it had become a chilling cautionary tale for the entire town. The house was built in the early 1900s by Thomas Grayson, a factory worker who, by all accounts, led a quiet and uneventful life. For years, the Grayson family lived peacefully, until tragedy struck one bitter winter night in 1923. Thomas's wife, Mary, and their young daughter, Abigail, vanished without explanation. No signs of forced entry or struggle were found, and, despite extensive searches, they were never seen again. Thomas, overwhelmed by grief and suspicion, soon spiraled into madness. Neighbors reported hearing anguished screams and bizarre chanting late into the night. He was eventually institutionalized, leaving the house abandoned and left to rot. From then on, the Grayson house gained a dark reputation. Neighbors spoke of strange noises and explained footsteps echoing through empty halls, shadowy figures glimpsed through curtained windows, and lights flickering in the dead of night. Children who played nearby would swear they heard whispers calling their names from the broken porch. Despite these warnings, over the decades, several people moved in, only to flee within days, haunted by experiences too terrifying to ignore. One such account was from Emily Carter, a young woman who rented the house in the early 1990s. Emily was a skeptic and saw the Grayson house as nothing more than a dilapidated old building. She moved in with hopes of renovating it into a charming home. But her optimism quickly crumbled as she began to notice unsettling occurrences. Doors slammed shut on their own, cold spots appeared without explanation, and soft crying echoed through the walls at odd hours. Emily's nights became restless as she was plagued by vivid nightmares. She dreamt of a little girl with hollow eyes, standing at the foot of her bed, whispering her name. The girl's voice was mournful and desperate, begging for help, but filled with warning. "Don't stay, they're watching." The dreams felt so real that Emily began to dread sleep, fearing what she might see next. One evening, Emily found an old diary tucked away beneath loose floorboards in the attic. The diary belonged to Abigail Grayson, the missing daughter from decades before. As Emily read the faded pages, she uncovered a story of fear and darkness. Abigail wrote of strange visitors who came at night, shadowy figures that whispered to her mother and filled the house with coldness. She spoke of a growing presence in the house, something evil that clawed at the walls and demanded sacrifice. The diary's final entry was abruptly cut off, with a scrawled message in the margins. "They took her. They took us all. Beware the house." Terrified but determined, Emily decided to confront whatever haunted the house. One cold night, she stayed awake, listening intently. As the clock struck midnight, the air grew thick and heavy. A low chanting began to seep through the walls, accompanied by flickering lights and the faint smell of burning incense. Suddenly, the shadows in the room shifted, coalescing into dark, indistinct shapes that circled her. Frozen in fear, Emily watched as a chilling apparition appeared, a woman in tattered clothing with hollow eyes. Reaching out with trembling hands, the spirit's voice was a whisper carried on the wind. "Leave, before it's too late." Emily fled the house, never to return. She warned others to stay away, but curiosity and disbelief kept drawing people back, many with harrowing consequences. The town's folklore grew, linking the Grayson house to occult practices, dark rituals, and a curse that trapped souls in eternal torment. Even today, The house remains empty and decaying, a grim reminder of the tragedy and terror that once unfolded within its walls. Locals avoid it after sunset, and those who pass by claim to hear faint crying and the soft echo of footsteps trailing behind them. The Grayson house is not just a house, it is a vessel of sorrow and evil, waiting silently for its next victim. If you want to hear more terrifying true stories from haunted places, subscribe and turn on notifications. Sometimes. The darkest secrets lie closer than you think, hiding behind familiar doors. The Grayson house was no exception. Over time, its sinister reputation grew, fueled by stories of unexplained disappearances and chilling encounters. It wasn't just a place haunted by restless spirits. It was a magnet for darkness that seemed to seep into the very soil beneath it. In the early 2000s, a local historian named Marcus Reed took an interest in uncovering the house's true history. Unlike most who feared it, Marcus was fascinated by the blend of tragedy and mystery. He began poring over town records, old newspapers, and personal accounts from descendants of the Grayson family. What he discovered was far more disturbing than he had imagined. Documents revealed that Thomas Grayson, before his mental breakdown, had become obsessed with the occult. He believed that dark forces had taken his family and sought forbidden knowledge to bring them back. Town whispers spoke of secret rituals held in the basement, strange symbols carved into the walls, and unholy pacts whispered in the dead of night. One particular journal entry detailed a ceremony gone horribly wrong, a desperate attempt to summon and bind the souls of the missing family. The ritual allegedly opened a gateway, releasing a malevolent entity that fed on fear and despair. The house itself became a prison for tormented spirits, including Abigail and Mary, who were trapped between worlds, unable to find peace. Marcus, intrigued and perhaps too bold, decided to visit the Grayson house. Equipped with recording devices and a notebook, he spent several nights documenting strange phenomena. He captured whispers in unknown languages, sudden drops in temperature, and shadowy figures that seemed to dart just out of the corner of his eye. During one night, Marcus found himself drawn to the basement door, where a low hum emanated from behind it. Ignoring the growing sense of dread, he forced the door open. The basement was a cavernous space, walls covered in ancient symbols painted in what looked like dried blood. In the center lay a cracked stone altar, stained with dark, unidentifiable marks. As Marcus approached, a sudden force slammed the door shut behind him. The room plunged into darkness. Panic rose as cold hands seemed to grip his shoulders. He heard a chorus of anguished voices chanting, begging for release, warning him to flee. Marcus barely escaped with his life, shaken and forever changed. After his experience, the historian warned the town. The house was not just haunted, was cursed, a nexus of dark power that grew stronger with each soul trapped inside. Despite his warnings, curiosity continued to lure people in. Years later, a group of amateur ghost hunters attempted to document the Grayson house's paranormal activity. They set up cameras and sensors, hoping to capture evidence of the supernatural. Their footage revealed terrifying images, faces contorted in agony, shadow figures reaching out, and a figure of a young girl, Abigail, appearing repeatedly, silently pleading for help. Tragically, one of the investigators disappeared after a solo exploration of the attic. His last video recording showed him trembling as he whispered, "It's watching me. I can't escape." The tape ended with a blood-curdling scream. The Grayson house stands to this day, abandoned and foreboding, its windows like dark eyes watching the world pass by. Locals steer clear, especially at night, when the wind carries mournful cries and the faint scent of burning incense, a lingering trace of the dark rituals that once took place. For the town of Millbridge, the Grayson house is a chilling reminder that some horrors are not stories but lingering realities, and some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. If you want to uncover more true, disturbing tales of haunted places and the mysteries that surround them, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because sometimes the darkest secrets are waiting just beyond your doorstep. Let's move to our third story. In the heart of a small town called Ashford, there stood a house that everyone in town avoided. The old Whitaker house was no ordinary home. It had a history soaked in tragedy, fear, and inexplicable horror that had haunted the town for generations. What made this house truly disturbing was not just the stories whispered around campfires, but the true events that had left an indelible mark on the community, turning it into a dark legend few dared to speak of aloud. Built in the late 1800s by Jonathan Whitaker, a respected local merchant, the house was once a symbol of prosperity. Jonathan and his wife, Margaret, lived there with their 3 children. But the Whitaker family's fortune took a turn for the worse when a mysterious illness swept through the household. One by one, the children fell ill, succumbing to a disease doctors of the time couldn't explain. Soon after, Jonathan's wife vanished without a trace, leaving the house in eerie silence. Jonathan, grief-stricken and isolated, locked the doors and refused to let anyone enter. Years passed, and the house was left to decay. Rumors began to spread that strange lights flickered in the windows at night, and that mournful cries could be heard drifting through the air. Those brave enough to venture close claimed to see shadowy figures moving behind the broken curtains, and some even reported being touched by unseen hands that sent chills down their spines. The most disturbing chapter in the Whitaker house's history began in the early 1970s, when a young couple, David and Lisa Miller, moved into the neighborhood, unaware of the house's dark past. David was a writer seeking solitude, and Lisa hoped to start a family. They bought the house at a suspiciously low price, intending to renovate it and make it their home. Almost immediately after moving in, the couple experienced bizarre occurrences. At first it was small things: a misplaced object, cold spots in certain rooms, and unsettling noises that had no source. But soon, the incidents escalated. Lisa began to suffer from vivid nightmares in which she saw a pale woman wandering the hallways, whispering warnings in a language neither she nor David could understand. David, meanwhile, began hearing scratching sounds coming from inside the walls, growing louder and more persistent each night. One chilling night, Lisa awoke to find herself unable to move, her body paralyzed, as a shadowy figure hovered over her, its breath cold against her skin. She struggled silently, powerless, as the entity whispered her name. This paralysis episodes became frequent, leaving Lisa terrified and exhausted. David's writing took a dark turn as well. His stories became filled with disturbing imagery that he could not consciously explain. Words and phrases appeared on the pages seemingly from nowhere, references to rituals, ancient curses, and warnings to flee. Seeking answers, David researched the Whitaker house's history and discovered that Jonathan Whitaker had been deeply involved in occult practices. Desperate to save his family from the mysterious illness, Jonathan had reportedly performed forbidden rituals, attempting to bargain with dark forces. The rituals, however, had backfired, cursing the house and trapping the spirits of his family. Within its walls, as the days went on, the supernatural activity intensified. Objects flew across rooms, unseen hands grabbed at the couple, and unexplainable screams echoed through the house at all hours. Lisa began to lose touch with reality, often seen talking to invisible entities and wandering the halls in a trance-like state. One night, David found a hidden room behind a bookshelf, a small chamber stained with strange symbols and old blood. In the center lay a ritual circle, surrounded by remnants of candles and strange artifacts. It was clear this was where Jonathan had conducted his dark ceremonies. That same night, the couple was awoken by a horrifying cacophony of unearthly screams, shattering glass, and the sound of heavy footsteps pounding the floors. Terrified, they fled the house and never returned. In the years since, the Whitaker house has remained vacant, a decaying monument to sorrow and evil. Locals say that if you stand outside at night, you can hear faint cries for help and see shadowy figures peering from broken windows. The house waits silently, its dark energy palpable, ready to ensnare anyone foolish enough to enter. This is not just a haunted house story. It's a tale of true horror rooted in despair, dark rituals, and a curse that continues to grip the town of Ashford. If you want to hear more true, disturbing tales from haunted houses and forgotten places, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. The next story might be closer than you think. waiting just around the corner. Asterisk. The next story might be closer than you think. Waiting just around the corner. For the residents of Ashford, the Whitaker house was more than just a local legend. It was a dark presence that loomed over their everyday lives. Stories of unexplained phenomena and tragic events connected to the house were passed down through generations, growing darker with each retelling. But beneath the layers of folklore, there were real people who had suffered, their lives forever altered by the horrors trapped within those walls. In the late 1980s, the house drew the attention of a young paranormal investigator named Sarah Jennings. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah spent weeks studying the house's history and interviewing those who had encountered its malevolent force. What she found was a pattern of madness, disappearances, and inexplicable violence linked to the Whitaker family curse. Sarah's investigation began with a visit to the town's archives, where she uncovered disturbing letters written by Jonathan Whitaker in his final days, filled with ramblings about dark powers, sacrifices, and eternal imprisonment. These writings suggested that Jonathan had become consumed by his own desperation, unleashing a force far beyond his control. Armed with this knowledge, Sarah entered the Whitaker house one chilly autumn evening. As she stepped inside, the air grew thick and suffocating, the temperature dropping sharply. Shadows seemed to shift and twist around her, and distant whispers echoed faintly through the cracked walls. She explored room after room, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. In the attic, she found the remnants of Jonathan's ritual scattered bones, cryptic symbols etched into the floor, and an ancient dust-covered tome bound in leather. As she opened the book, a sudden chill ran down her spine, and she felt an unseen presence watching her every move. That night, Sarah experienced phenomena that defied explanation. Doors slammed shut without cause, unseen fingers brushed her skin, and ghostly figures appeared and vanished at the edge of her vision. Most terrifying was the recurring apparition of a pale woman in tattered clothing, her eyes filled with sorrow and warning, determined to help release the trapped spirits. Sarah attempted to perform a cleansing ritual she had learned from ancient texts, but the house fought back fiercely. The walls seemed to pulse with dark energy, voices rose in furious chants, and the floor trembled beneath her feet. It became clear that the curse was not just a residual haunting, but a malevolent force actively seeking to maintain its grip, in a desperate bid to escape. Sarah fled the house, but not before the pale woman whispered a chilling warning. The darkness never leaves. It waits. Since then, no one has lived in the Whitaker house. The town's residents keep their distance, wary of the evil that dwells there. Some say the house's curse has begun to spread, affecting nearby homes with unexplained illnesses and strange accidents. Others claim to see lights flickering in the windows late at night, or hear desperate cries carried on the wind. The Whitaker house remains a dark monument to a family's tragic past, and a curse that refuses to fade. It is a place where the veil between this world and something far more sinister has been torn. A house that waits patiently for the next soul to cross its threshold. If you want to hear more true, disturbing stories from haunted houses and cursed places, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because sometimes, the most terrifying tales are hiding closer than you think, just behind the next door. Let's move to our fourth story. In the quiet town of Ravenswood, nestled deep in the forests of New England, there stood an ancient house that had long been the subject of dread and dark rumors. Known simply as the Blackwood House, it was a place shunned by locals, an imposing Victorian structure with weathered black wood siding, broken shutters, and a sagging roof that seemed to sag under the weight of its own sinister history. Though it appeared abandoned for decades, the Blackwood House held secrets darker than the shadows that clung to its walls. The house was originally built in the late 1800s by the Blackwood family, a wealthy and respected lineage known for their philanthropy and social status. But beneath their polished reputation lurked a history marked by madness, tragedy, and a series of unexplained disappearances that plagued the family and the town alike. The earliest known tragedy occurred shortly after the house was completed. Jonathan Blackwood, the family patriarch, vanished mysteriously one stormy night, leaving behind a cryptic note that read, "The darkness calls me home." His disappearance was never explained, and rumors swirled that he had been involved in occult practices, dabbling in forbidden rituals to protect his family, or perhaps to gain forbidden knowledge. Years later, Jonathan's wife, Elizabeth, was found dead in the basement under suspicious circumstances, her body contorted in an unnatural pose. The official cause was listed as accidental, but townspeople whispered of darker forces at work, pointing to strange symbols found scrawled on the basement walls, and strange rituals witnessed by frightened neighbors. The Blackwood children fared no better. Over the decades, several of them were reported missing, never to be found, or were discovered years later, their bodies showing signs of horrific mutilation, frozen expressions of terror etched on their faces. The town's police files were thick with unsolved cases linked to the house, each more disturbing than the last. Despite the grim history, a man named Daniel Collins moved into the Blackwood house in the late 1990s. Drawn by curiosity and a fascination with the paranormal, Daniel was a historian and paranormal investigator determined to uncover the truth behind the legends. He believed that by documenting and understanding the house's past, he could unlock the mysteries and perhaps lay the restless spirits to rest. From the moment Daniel stepped inside, he felt a suffocating heaviness, as if the house itself exhaled despair. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and something far more sinister, an undercurrent of malevolence that made the hairs on his neck stand on end. Over the next few months, Daniel recorded countless eerie phenomena. Footsteps echoed through empty hallways, disembodied voices whispered indecipherable words, and chilling cold spots appeared and vanished unpredictably. More disturbing were the shadowy figures that seemed to flicker just beyond the reach of his flashlight, always watching, always waiting. One night, Daniel discovered a hidden room behind a false wall in the attic. Inside were remnants of dark rituals, ancient books bound in cracked leather, dried herbs, and symbols etched in dried blood on the floor. He realized that the Blackwood family's reputation for philanthropy masked a horrifying secret. Generations of occult worship and sacrifices, meant to appease a malevolent entity tied to the land itself. As Daniel delved deeper, his nights became haunted by vivid nightmares of a dark figure cloaked in shadow, its eyes glowing red, reaching out to claim him. He awoke on several occasions to find scratches on his arms and strange markings burned into his skin. The house seemed to resist his presence, exerting a relentless psychological pressure that frayed his mind. His recordings captured frantic whispers begging for release, screams of agony, and the chilling laughter of children twisted by torment. Despite mounting fear, Daniel refused to leave. His obsession grew, and he became convinced that the entity feeding on the Blackwood family's souls was still trapped within the house, desperate to escape into the world. One particularly harrowing night, Daniel attempted to perform a cleansing ritual using the ancient texts he had uncovered. As he chanted the incantations, the house reacted violently. Walls shook, windows shattered, and a black mist poured from the basement, swirling around him like living smoke. The malevolent presence manifested fully, a towering, shadowy figure with burning red eyes, and a face that twisted in eternal rage. Daniel barely escaped the house that night, his clothes torn, and his body marked with bruises and burns. He fled Ravenswood, leaving behind all his equipment and research. The Blackwood house remains standing to this day, its dark history untouched, and its malevolent presence still a source of fear. Locals avoid the area, warning outsiders that the house is alive with evil, waiting for the next soul to cross its threshold. The Blackwood house is more than just a haunted house. It is a tomb of darkness, a place where human souls are consumed and forgotten. If you want to uncover more true, disturbing horror stories from forgotten places like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Because sometimes, the scariest places are not in the shadows, they are the shadows. After Daniel's terrifying escape from the Blackwood house, rumors about his experience spread through Ravenswood like wildfire. Some dismissed his accounts as the ravings of a broken mind, but many who knew Daniel believed the story, especially when his disappearance following the incident left friends and family desperate for answers. Weeks after he fled, strange occurrences began in nearby homes. Lights flickered without explanation, cold spots appeared in rooms where no windows existed, and pets refused to enter the vicinity of the Blackwood property. Whispers of a dark presence, spreading beyond the house's walls, ignited new fears. Local authorities, skeptical but concerned, attempted to investigate. Yet, every time an official party approached the property, electronic devices malfunctioned. Radios lost signal, and compasses spun wildly. Dogs growled and refused to cross the threshold, and some officers reported hearing faint crying or seeing shadows darting just out of sight. One of the last documented attempts to enter the Blackwood house involved a group of paranormal researchers who brought extensive equipment. Their recordings were chilling, capturing guttural growls, high-pitched screams, and a voice pleading, "Leave, leave before it's too late." Before they could finish, their equipment exploded, and they fled, never to return. Some townsfolk believe the Blackwood house sits atop a rift between worlds, a place where darkness has seeped into the earth itself. Others claim that the malevolent entity bound to the house is a fallen spirit, cursed to feed on human suffering for eternity. Despite the warnings, trespassers occasionally venture close, drawn by morbid curiosity or the promise of proving the supernatural. None have stayed long. Most returned shaken, speaking of shadows that breathe, eyes that glow in the dark, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched. The Blackwood house's dark legacy continues to grow, a grim reminder that some places are best left undisturbed. Its story is a chilling testament to the dangers of meddling with forces beyond human understanding. If you want to explore more true and disturbing stories from haunted houses and cursed places, subscribe and activate notifications. Remember, some doors once opened can never be closed. Let's move to our fifth story. In the sleepy town of Hollow Creek, tucked away beneath the shadow of ancient oaks, there stood a house that the locals called the Hollow Manor. To the untrained eye, it looked like any other old farmhouse, weather-beaten structure with peeling paint and a sagging porch. But those who lived in Hollow Creek knew better. The Hollow Manor was a place where nightmares were born, a house drenched in a history of sorrow, madness, and unspeakable horrors. The manor was built in the late 1800s by a man named Elijah Granger, a farmer and devout man known throughout the town for his stern demeanor and mysterious past. The Granger family lived there for generations, but the house's peaceful facade concealed a series of tragedies that turned it into a beacon for darkness. The first dark mark on the manor's history came when Elijah's wife, Clara, died under strange circumstances. It was said she had gone into a deep depression after the loss of their first child and became obsessed with the occult, searching for ways to communicate with the dead. Locals whispered that Clara's dabbling had awakened something terrible within the house, an ancient evil that fed on despair. Soon after Clara's death, strange things began to happen. The house seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Doors slammed without wind, lights flickered, and disembodied voices echoed through empty rooms. Family members reported seeing ghostly figures wandering the halls and feeling icy hands brush against their skin. Some claimed that at night, the manor emitted low, mournful wails, as if the very walls cried out in agony. In the 1950s, the Granger lineage ended abruptly when the last heir, Thomas Granger, vanished without a trace. No clues were ever found, no sign of struggle, no footprints, nothing. His disappearance deepened the manor's dark reputation, and soon the house was abandoned, left to decay and rot. Years later, in the early 1990s, a young couple named Mark and Emily Benson moved to Hollow Creek, eager for a fresh start, away from the bustle of city life. Drawn by the manor's low price and picturesque setting, they purchased the house, unaware of the horrors that awaited them. Almost immediately after moving in, the Bensons experienced unexplainable events. At first, they thought it was the house settling the usual creaks and groans of an old building. But soon, the occurrences became far more sinister. Emily began hearing whispers in the middle of the night, soft voices calling her name from the darkness. Mark found strange symbols carved into the wooden beams of the attic, symbols that seemed to shift and writhe when looked at directly. Emily's dreams turned into nightmares, filled with shadowy figures reaching for her, and a voice that promised pain and suffering if she ever tried to leave the house. She awoke one night to find scratches on her arms, fresh and deep, with no explanation. Mark's health began to decline rapidly. He suffered from severe headaches, hallucinations, and bouts of uncontrollable rage. Desperate, the couple sought the help of a local historian who told them of the manor's dark past, the Granger family's involvement with occult rituals meant to protect the land, but that instead bound a malevolent entity to the house. The historian warned them that the entity fed on fear and despair, and that breaking the curse would require confronting the darkness within the manor itself. Ignoring the warnings, Mark and Emily tried to cleanse the house using traditional methods, water sage, prayers, but nothing worked. The entity grew stronger, and the house's malevolence intensified. Doors slammed violently, windows shattered, and a thick black fog seeped from the basement, filling the rooms with suffocating dread. One terrifying night, Emily was dragged, screaming into the basement, by an unseen force. Mark tried to rescue her, but was thrown back by a violent blast of cold air. Emily's screams echoed through the house for hours, before suddenly stopping, leaving only an eerie silence. Mark fled the house, never to return. Locals say that sometimes, on stormy nights, you can hear Emily's cries carried on the wind near the ruins of the Hollow Manor. The house remains abandoned, its dark presence a reminder of the tragedy that unfolded within. The Hollow Manor is more than a haunted house. It is a prison of darkness, a place where hope dies and evil thrives. Those who venture near do so at their own peril, for some doors should never be opened. If you want to discover more true, disturbing stories of haunted houses and cursed places, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Because sometimes, the most terrifying horrors are lurking right in your own backyard. After Mark's frantic escape, the townspeople of Hollow Creek grew increasingly wary of the manor. Whispers spread like wildfire about the house's cursed nature and the horrifying fate of the Bensons. Many believed the house itself was alive, feeding on the suffering of those trapped within. Curiosity and fear mingled in the hearts of a few brave souls, including Sarah Whitman, a paranormal researcher who had heard tales of the manor's dark history. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah arrived in Hollow Creek with an array of equipment, ready to document the supernatural phenomena that plagued the house. On her first night inside the manor, Sarah felt an oppressive heaviness descend upon her. The air was thick, suffocating, and charged with an unseen menace. As she explored the rooms, her equipment picked up faint voices, whispers, so low she had to strain to hear them. They seemed to speak in an ancient tongue, chanting words that sent shivers down her spine. Sarah's recordings revealed disturbing sounds, anguished screams, the scraping of claws against wood, and the sound of footsteps pacing in rooms where no one stood. Cameras captured fleeting shadows darting just out of the frame, and temperature readings plunged to freezing levels in the middle of summer. Her most unsettling discovery came when she found a hidden chamber beneath the floorboards of the living room. Inside lay relics from the Granger family's occult past, ancient talismans, burnt candles, and faded manuscripts detailing rituals to bind spirits and summon dark forces. Sarah pieced together the grim reality. The Grangers had attempted to trap a malevolent entity to protect their land, but instead had damned themselves and the manor to eternal torment. The entity fed on fear, growing stronger with each soul it ensnared. Determined to free the trapped spirits, Sarah began preparations for a cleansing ritual. But the house would not relinquish its hold easily. As she recited ancient incantations, the manor responded with terrifying fury. Walls groaned and cracked, windows exploded inward, and a black mist poured from the basement, swirling around her like living smoke. From the depths of the fog, a grotesque figure emerged, twisted amalgamation of shadows and malice with burning eyes and a mouth that opened in a silent scream. Sarah barely escaped with her life, retreating as the entity's rage shook the very foundation of the manor. In the aftermath, Sarah warned the town. The Hollow Manor was a nexus of darkness, a place where the boundary between the living and the damned had dissolved. The entity's hunger was insatiable, and the house would continue to claim victims unless the curse was broken. Local legend holds that the Hollow Manor is not just haunted, but possessed alive, with a sentient evil that waits patiently for the next family to stumble into its grasp. Even today, visitors to Hollow Creek report strange occurrences near the manor's ruins, unexplained chills, faint cries echoing on the wind, and shadows flickering in the corner of their eyes. Some say they see a woman in white wandering the grounds, forever searching for peace. The hollow manor stands as a grim reminder that some darkness cannot be escaped, and some doors, once opened, lead only to eternal despair. If you want to hear more true, disturbing stories from haunted houses and cursed places, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because sometimes, the most terrifying horrors aren't just stories, they're warnings. Let's move to our sixth story. In the small, seemingly peaceful town of Millfield, there was a house that had long been whispered about with fear and suspicion. The Driscoll house. It was a sprawling Victorian mansion on the outskirts of town, its once grand facade now marred by years of neglect and an unsettling air that clung to its very foundation. Locals avoided the property, especially after sunset, warning that the house held a darkness unlike anything they had ever seen. The house was built in the late 19th century by the Driscoll family, prominent members of Millfield's early society. The family was known for their wealth and influence, but beneath the surface lurked secrets darker than the house's peeling wallpaper. The Driscolls were said to have dabbled in esoteric practices, using their resources to explore forbidden rituals that promised power and immortality. The earliest tragedy recorded in the Driscoll house was the mysterious death of Edward Driscoll, the patriarch. One night, he was found in his study, with his face frozen in a grotesque expression of terror, and his body cold to the touch, as if life had been sucked out of him. No cause of death could be determined. Following Edward's death, his wife, Margaret, descended into madness. She spoke to unseen entities, claimed to hear voices whispering dark prophecies, and locked herself away in the upper chambers for days on end. Strange occurrences soon plagued the house. Servants quit in droves, unable to bear the oppressive atmosphere. Neighbors reported hearing agonized screams echoing through the night, lights flickering in the windows despite the absence of anyone inside, and shadowy figures glimpsed through broken curtains. The town council considered condemning the house, but the Driscoll family insisted it remained theirs, an inheritance cursed but unyielding. Fast forward to the late 1980s, when a young couple, Daniel and Rebecca Harris, moved into the Driscoll house, drawn by the property's low price and their dreams of renovating it. Initially, they dismissed the warnings as superstition, but soon, they found themselves trapped in a nightmare far beyond anything they imagined. Rebecca was the first to sense something was wrong. At night, she felt cold hands brush her skin, even when Daniel was beside her. She heard whispering voices, calling her name in languages she did not understand. One evening, she awoke to find the room drenched in an icy chill, the shadows along the walls coalescing into twisted shapes that seemed to reach out for her. Daniel tried to rationalize the events, attributing them to old pipes, drafts, and imagination. But when objects began to move on, their own candlesticks sliding across tables, doors slamming without cause, and the family dog refused to enter certain rooms, even he began to feel the dread creeping in. The couple soon discovered a locked door in the basement. Breaking it open revealed a hidden chamber filled with occult paraphernalia, ancient books, dried herbs, and a circular altar stained dark with what looked like dried blood. The air was thick with an oppressive energy that made their skin crawl. Among the relics, Daniel found a journal written by one of Edward Driscoll's descendants. It detailed how the family had tried to summon and bind a dark spirit, hoping to harness its power. The ritual went horribly wrong, unleashing a malevolent entity that had since haunted the house, feeding on the souls of its inhabitants. As weeks passed, the paranormal activity intensified. Rebecca was tormented by nightmares where shadowy figures dragged her into darkness. Daniel's health deteriorated, plagued by headaches and hallucinations. Their dog disappeared mysteriously, leaving behind only claw marks on the basement door. One fateful night, Daniel awoke to find Rebecca missing. Desperate, he searched the house, following faint cries that led him to the basement. There, he encountered a figure cloaked in shadows, its eyes glowing with unholy fire. The entity snarled and lunged, but Daniel managed to flee, slamming the door shut behind him. He never saw Rebecca again. Years later, the Driscoll house stands abandoned, its dark history whispered in fearful tones by the townsfolk of Millfield. The house is said to be cursed, a place where evil lingers and where the line between the living and the dead is dangerously thin. Visitors who dare approach the Driscoll house at night report seeing glowing eyes watching from broken windows, hearing distant screams, and feeling a suffocating presence that chills the soul. If you want to hear more true, disturbing stories from haunted houses and cursed places, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Because sometimes, the darkest horrors are hidden behind familiar walls, waiting patiently in the shadows. After Daniel's terrifying encounter in the basement, the town of Millfield grew uneasy. The Driscoll house, once a symbol of prosperity, had become a dark stain on the community's history. Rumors spread that the malevolent force within the house was growing stronger, feeding off the fear and despair of those who dared come close. Not long after Daniel's disappearance, a group of locals decided to take matters into their own hands. They formed a small team led by Father Matthew, a priest known for his knowledge of exorcisms and spiritual cleansing. The group entered the Driscoll house with candles, holy water, and sacred texts, determined to confront the evil that plagued the building. From the moment they stepped inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. The air felt thick and heavy, as if charged with unseen electricity. Whispers echoed from the walls, and shadows danced just beyond the reach of their flashlights. As they ventured deeper, objects flew off shelves, doors slammed shut, and an unearthly growl reverberated through the halls in the basement. Father Matthew performed rites of exorcism, chanting prayers to banish the dark entity. But the house fought back with terrifying force. The altar's bloodstains seemed to pulse with life, and the shadows coalesced into a monstrous form towering, twisted, and radiating pure malice. It lunged at the team, scattering them in all directions. Miraculously, Father Matthew managed to hold the entity at bay, forcing it to retreat into the darkest corners of the house. The group escaped, battered and shaken, vowing never to return. Despite their efforts, the curse of the Driscoll house was far from broken. Years passed, and the house continued to claim victims. A real estate agent, who tried to sell the property, vanished mysteriously. Teenagers who dared to explore the ruins reported terrifying visions and unexplainable injuries. Even police officers patrolling the area spoke of strange sensations and shadowy figures watching from the trees. Researchers studying the Driscoll house theorized that the entity bound there is a remnant of a powerful demon summoned centuries ago, trapped by the Driscoll family's rituals but never truly contained. Its hunger for souls remains unquenched, making the house a beacon for dark forces. Today, the Driscoll house stands in ruins, a crumbling monument to a dark past. The windows are shattered, the walls cracked, and the grounds overrun with weeds. Yet, the evil within remains alive, waiting, patient, and ever hungry. Locals warn outsiders to stay away, sharing stories of people who entered and never returned. The Driscoll house is a place where reality bends, and the living and the dead share a dangerous boundary. If you're drawn to tales of haunted houses and unspeakable evil, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Because sometimes, the scariest stories aren't just fiction, they're warnings etched in history. Let's move to our 7th story. In the quiet town of Ashwood, nestled between dense forests and mist-covered hills, there stood a house, unlike any other, the Whitmore estate. Once a grand mansion symbolizing wealth and prestige, it had since fallen into ruin, its crumbling walls whispered about in hushed tones. The locals avoided the estate after dark, fearful of the chilling tales passed down through generations. The Whitmore family were the original owners, a lineage that traced back to the town's founding. Known for their eccentricity and secretive nature, the Whitmores amassed great wealth, but were also shadowed by tragedy. It began when the youngest daughter, Eleanor Whitmore, mysteriously disappeared one stormy night in the late 1800s. No trace of her was ever found, and the estate was said to have been cursed ever since. Years later, strange happenings became commonplace in Ashwood. People reported seeing flickering lights in the estate's windows, though the house had long been abandoned. Sounds of soft, sorrowful singing drifted through the trees at night, and shadows danced just beyond the edge of the forest. In the 1970s, a historian named Laura Bennett came to Ashwood, intrigued by the legends surrounding the Whitmore estate. Determined to uncover the truth, she began researching the family's past and the estate's dark reputation. Laura learned that Eleanor had been involved with occult practices, seeking to communicate with spirits from beyond. Some believe she had opened a portal to a darker realm, trapping her soul within the estate. Undeterred, Laura decided to explore the estate herself. Upon entering, she was met with an overwhelming sense of despair and cold. The air was thick with the scent of decay and something far more sinister. As she wandered through the dilapidated halls, whispers seemed to follow her, growing louder with every step. In the attic, Laura discovered a dusty journal filled with Eleanor's handwriting. The entries spoke of dark rituals, eerie voices, and a growing presence that consumed her mind. The final entry ended abruptly, with a desperate plea for help. Suddenly, Laura felt a cold breath on the back of her neck and spun around, but saw nothing. The shadows lengthened and seemed to pulse. With life, she realized she was not alone. The entity that had claimed Eleanor still lingered, feeding off the estate's sorrow. Laura tried to leave, but the doors slammed shut, trapping her inside. The singing grew louder, morphing into anguished screams. Terrified, she fled through the corridors, chased by unseen hands and whispering voices, promising eternal torment. She barely escaped with her life, but the experience left her haunted. The Whitmore estate remained a place where darkness thrived, a prison for restless souls, and a warning to those who dared to uncover its secrets. If you want to hear more true, disturbing stories from haunted houses and cursed places, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Because sometimes, the past refuses to stay buried, and some houses hold horrors that never die. After Laura's harrowing escape, the town of Ashwood became even more wary of the Whitmore estate. Local residents spoke in whispers about how the estate's curse seemed to reach beyond its crumbling walls, touching those who came near. Children were warned never to venture close after sunset, and many adults believed the land itself had been tainted by Eleanor's dark rituals. Several years after Laura's visit, a group of paranormal investigators arrived, eager to explore the estate's mysteries using the latest technology. Equipped with cameras, EMF detectors, and audio recorders, they spent nights within the estate's decaying rooms, hoping to capture evidence of the supernatural. Their recordings were chilling. Faint singing echoed through empty halls, captured on audio devices, despite no one else being present. Shadowy figures appeared briefly in video footage, flickering like ghosts caught between worlds. Temperatures plummeted without explanation, and equipment malfunctioned repeatedly, as if sabotaged by an unseen force. One investigator, Mark, experienced terrifying visions. He saw Eleanor's pale face, eyes hollow and desperate, reaching out to him from the darkness. He felt an oppressive weight on his chest, as if something tried to squeeze the breath from his lungs. These encounters left him shaken, and convinced the estate was a hotspot for malevolent energy. As their investigations deepened, the team discovered a sealed room behind a false wall in the basement. Inside lay remnants of Eleanor's occult experiments, ancient symbols, painted in blood-red paint, dried herbs scattered across an altar, and faded photographs of shadowy figures that defied explanation. The investigators hypothesized that Eleanor had successfully opened a gateway to another realm, but had been trapped there herself, leaving a conduit between worlds behind. This connection allowed dark entities to seep into the estate, feeding on the fear and sorrow of anyone who dared enter, in a desperate attempt to contain the evil. The team performed a cleansing ritual, calling on light and protection to banish the shadows, but the estate responded with fury. Doors slammed, walls seemed to breathe, and ghostly screams pierced the night. The ritual was incomplete, and the darkness only grew stronger. Over time, the Whitmore estate gained a reputation as one of the most haunted places in the region. Paranormal enthusiasts and thrill-seekers ventured to the estate, some never to return. Those who escaped spoke of invisible hands grabbing at their ankles, cold whispers calling their names, and terrifying visions of a woman trapped between life and death. Local legend now tells of Eleanor's restless spirit wandering the estate, forever searching for release. Her sorrowful singing is said to echo on stormy nights, a haunting reminder of the price paid for meddling with forces beyond human understanding. The estate remains abandoned, its walls crumbling but its darkness alive. Ashwood's residents warn all to stay far away. For the Whitmore estate is a place where time is distorted, and the boundary between worlds is dangerously thin. If you want to explore more true stories of haunted houses, cursed places, and chilling encounters, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because sometimes the scariest tales are the ones that refuse to be forgotten, despite the warnings and the mounting evidence of the estate's dark nature. Curiosity and greed continued to draw people toward the Whitmore estate. In the early 2000s, a real estate developer named Jonathan Crane purchased the property, intent on restoring it to its former glory and turning it into a luxury retreat. He believed the stories were mere superstition and dismissed local fears as folklore meant to scare off outsiders. Jonathan brought a team of workers and contractors to begin renovations. Almost immediately, strange occurrences began. Tools would vanish and reappear in odd places. Machinery malfunctioned without cause, and workers reported hearing eerie lullabies drifting through the halls, even during the day. One night, a laborer named Tom claimed he saw a pale figure in a long dress wandering the grounds. The apparition's eyes were dark voids, and her mouth moved silently as if begging for help. Tom quit the job the next day, his nerves shattered as the work progressed. Jonathan grew obsessed with uncovering the estate's secrets. He delved into the family archives and discovered unsettling letters exchanged between Eleanor and her mother. The letters spoke of forbidden knowledge, warnings ignored, and a dark presence growing stronger within the house. Eleanor wrote of a shadow that whispered promises of power but demanded a terrible price in return. Jonathan's obsession drove him deeper into the estate's darkest corners. He uncovered hidden rooms bricked up for decades, covered in cryptic symbols and strange markings. In one chamber, he found an altar with remnants of ritual offerings, burned candles, bones, and dried flowers. Strange things began happening to Jonathan personally. He suffered vivid nightmares in which shadowy figures clawed at his mind, dragging him toward an endless abyss. He awoke one night to find scratches and bruises on his body, with no memory of how they appeared. The estate's malevolent force seemed to feed off his fear and obsession. Jonathan became increasingly isolated and paranoid, convinced that unseen entities were watching his every move. His relationships with friends and family deteriorated as he withdrew into the house's suffocating. Gripped out one stormy evening, Jonathan disappeared. His abandoned car was found at the edge of the estate, but no sign of him was ever uncovered. Search parties scoured the grounds, but came up empty-handed. Some claimed to hear his screams echoing from the woods during tempestuous nights. Years passed, and the Whitmore estate remained a decaying monument to tragedy and terror. The locals continued to share warnings, telling tales of how the estate seemed alive, pulsating with an ancient evil that refused to be exorcised or destroyed. Paranormal groups still visit, hoping to catch a glimpse of the estate's secrets, but few stay long. Those who do report feeling watched, hearing mournful singing, and seeing flashes of a woman in white Eleanor trapped between worlds, her spirit forever cursed by the dark bargains she made long ago. Ashwood's residents accept the estate as a grim part of their history, a haunted place where curiosity invites danger, and the past bleeds into the present. The Whitmore estate is more than just a ruined mansion. It's a reminder that some doors should never be opened, some secrets are better left buried, and some souls are doomed to wander forever. Let's move to our ninth story, in the forgotten town of Raven's Hollow. On the edge of a dense and ancient forest stood a house unlike any other, the Caldwell Manor. Its once majestic architecture was now cloaked in ivy and shadow, a monument to tragedy and whispered horrors. The manor had long been the subject of local folklore, a place no one dared to enter after sunset. The Caldwell family had been prominent figures in Raven's Hollow since the early 1800s. Wealthy and influential, they built the manor as a symbol of their power and prestige. But behind the grand facade lurked dark secrets. The family was rumored to have been involved in occult practices, secret gatherings, and forbidden rituals aimed at extending their lives and gaining supernatural influence. The most disturbing tale involved the disappearance of Jonathan Caldwell, the youngest son, who vanished without a trace one stormy night. Locals claimed they heard his screams echoing through the forest, but no body was ever found. After his disappearance, the manor's occupants suffered a series of tragedies, madness, and unexplained deaths. Years passed, and the manor fell into ruin, left abandoned and slowly reclaimed by nature. Tales of ghostly apparitions, unexplainable noises, and strange lights in the windows spread throughout the town, cementing Caldwell Manor's reputation as a place of evil. In the late 1990s, a man named Henry Wallace, a paranormal investigator driven by a personal quest, came to Raven's Hollow, haunted by the mysterious disappearance of his sister years before. He believed that the manor held the key to unlocking the truth about supernatural forces and missing souls. Henry spent weeks researching the Caldwell family, uncovering journals, letters, and secret records that revealed the family's obsession with dark magic and immortality. He learned about a ritual performed centuries ago that was meant to bind a demonic entity to the family's bloodline, granting power, but also cursing their descendants to eternal torment. Determined to confront the darkness, Henry ventured into Caldwell Manor, despite warnings. The house greeted him with silence and shadow, the air thick with a suffocating presence. As he explored, he encountered chilling signs, strange symbols scrawled on walls, cold spots that numbed his limbs, and distant whispers calling his name. In the manor's depths, Henry discovered a hidden chamber beneath the floorboards. Inside were relics of the family's occult rituals, ancient tomes, ceremonial knives, and remnants of bloodied offerings. The room pulsed with a dark energy that seemed to watch him. That night, Henry was tormented by vivid nightmares of shadowy figures dragging him into darkness. He awoke to find scratch marks on his arms and his equipment malfunctioning inexplicably. The boundary between the living and the dead in Caldwell Manor was dangerously thin. As days passed, Henry's grip on reality began to unravel. Apparitions of Jonathan Caldwell appeared, his hollow eyes pleading for release. The manor seemed alive, twisting and shifting, trapping Henry within its malevolent grasp. One night, Henry disappeared. His last recorded message was a frantic plea for help, his voice distorted and filled with terror. No trace of him was ever found, and Caldwell Manor remained a dark enigma. Today, the manor stands as a decaying monument to a cursed lineage, a place where evil festers and where souls are lost to the shadows. Locals warn travelers to steer clear. For Caldwell Manor is a house where darkness never sleeps, and where the past and present blur into a nightmare. Following Henry Wallace's disappearance, Raven's Hollow was gripped by a chilling silence. The townsfolk whispered of a darkness so deep that even the bravest dared not approach Caldwell Manor. Over the years, more curious souls, drawn by the manor's dark legend or the lure of paranormal fame, ventured inside only to return shattered, or not at all. Several paranormal research teams arrived, equipped with the latest technology, infrared cameras, EVP recorders, and electromagnetic field detectors. Their investigations yielded disturbing evidence. Voices of unseen entities were captured on audio, screaming in agony and pleading for release. Shadowy figures flickered across video feeds, vanishing whenever approached. Cold spots would plunge rooms into unnatural chill, sometimes freezing. The breath of visitors, one investigator, Claire Simmons, experienced terrifying encounters. She described seeing a pale man with hollow eyes, watching her silently from a distant hallway. At times, she felt invisible hands clutching at her, pulling. her toward dark corners. These encounters left her physically and mentally drained, forcing her to abandon her research. Delving deeper into the manor's history, Claire uncovered journals written by the Caldwell matriarch, Lydia Caldwell. Lydia's entries detailed a pact made with a demonic force and entity bound to the family to grant them power and longevity in exchange for their souls. The ritual, however, was flawed. Instead of securing eternal life, it cursed the bloodline, trapping them in a liminal space between life and death. The journals hinted at a secret chamber beneath the manor where the ritual was first performed, a place said to be the heart of the darkness, where the entity's power was strongest. According to Lydia's notes, only by destroying the ancient altar within that chamber could the curse be broken. Fueled by this knowledge, Claire gathered a small team and planned a final expedition to Caldwell Manor. They intended to find the chamber, destroy the altar, and end the torment once and for all. Upon entering the manor, the atmosphere thickened with menace. Walls seemed to pulse, floors creaked under unseen footsteps, and the air vibrated with whispered curses. Shadows moved with a will of their own, twisting into grotesque shapes, navigating the manor's labyrinthine corridors. The team finally discovered the hidden chamber, concealed beneath a trapdoor in the cellar. Inside, the altar stood, a grotesque monument adorned with blood-stained symbols, ancient bones, and flickering candles that seemed untouched by time. As they prepared to destroy the altar, the entity manifested an enormous shadow with glowing, crimson eyes and a presence that sucked the warmth from the air. It roared in fury, shaking the manor to its foundations. The team fought back, chanting prayers, breaking relics, and setting fire to the altar. The house screamed with rage, walls cracking and floorboards splintering. The entity howled, a sound that echoed beyond the manor, chilling the hearts of all nearby. Finally, with a thunderous crash, the altar collapsed into flames. The entity shrieked and dissolved into a swirling vortex of shadow, leaving a deafening silence. The manor seemed to breathe one last sigh before falling still. The curse was broken. In the aftermath, Caldwell Manor's grip on Raven's Hollow lessened. Though the house remained abandoned and eerie, the malevolent presence had dissipated. Locals cautiously reclaimed the surrounding land, telling stories of the brave few who faced the darkness and lived to tell the tale. Caldwell Manor stands as a somber reminder of the perils of dark ambition and forbidden pacts. Its story is etched into the fabric of the town, a warning and a testament to the courage of those who dared confront evil itself. After the altar's destruction, Caldwell Manor seemed to fall into a heavy silence, as if the very walls were holding their breath. The oppressive atmosphere that had once suffocated the town began to ease, but the scars of the past remained deeply etched into the manor's crumbling structure. Though the evil entity was banished, the house still carried a lingering sorrow, a reminder of the countless souls trapped and lost over centuries. The town of Ravens Hollow slowly started to recover from the dark shadow that had hovered over it for so long. Local residents began cautiously clearing the estate's overgrown grounds, yet most avoided the house itself. Superstitions died hard, and many believed the manor was still haunted by the restless spirits of the Caldwell family. Among these spirits was Jonathan Caldwell, the youngest son who had vanished so many years before. Numerous witnesses over the years claimed to have seen his pale figure roaming the grounds on foggy evenings, his hollow eyes reflecting a profound sadness and longing for peace. Others spoke of hearing faint cries for help echoing from the forest nearby, where Jonathan's screams were said to have first echoed. Paranormal experts continued to visit the manor, drawn by its infamous reputation. While the demonic force was gone, these visitors often reported fleeting shadows, sudden chills, and the unmistakable feeling of unseen eyes watching from the dark corners. It seemed that while the worst evil had been driven out, the house's tragic history had left a residue, an echo of pain that refused to fade. The Caldwell family curse was a cautionary tale for Raven's Hollow. It was a story passed down through generations, warning of the dangers of unchecked ambition and tampering with powers beyond human understanding. Many believed that the true horror was not just the dark entity, but the price the family paid for trying to cheat fate. For Henry Wallace, the investigator who had vanished within the manor, his fate remains a mystery. Some speculate that his spirit still lingers, trapped between worlds, eternally searching for the answers he sought. Others believe he was claimed by the darkness, another lost soul in Caldwell Manor's tragic history. Let's move to our 10th story. In the quiet, rain-soaked town of Black Hollow, there was a house that every local knew to avoid the Greystone House, perched on the edge of a dense forest and surrounded by gnarled trees. The house was an imposing, Victorian mansion that had fallen into decay. Its darkened windows and sagging porch seemed to watch the world with a sinister gaze, and it was said that no one who entered after dusk ever came out unchanged. The Greystone House was built in 1892 by the wealthy Greystone family, known for their sharp business dealings and reclusive nature. But whispers spread that the family's fortune was steeped in cruelty and bloodshed. Rumors told of occult rituals, forbidden experiments, and unspeakable tragedies that tainted the mansion's walls. The darkest chapter in the house's history began with the disappearance of the youngest Greystone child, Alice. On a stormy night, she vanished without a trace from her bedroom. Her frantic parents searched the house and grounds, but only her eerie lullaby was heard echoing through the halls. After her disappearance, the family's fortune declined rapidly, and one by one, members of the Greystone family met strange, often violent ends. Decades later, the mansion stood abandoned, slowly crumbling under the weight of its own sinister past. Locals told tales of strange lights flickering in the windows, chilling cries at night, and shadowy figures glimpsed from the forest's edge. The house was more than just haunted, it was cursed. In 2003, a young couple named Emma and Lucas decided to buy the Greystone house, captivated by its eerie charm and hoping to restore it to its former glory. At first, they dismissed the local legends as superstition, but soon, they discovered that the house harbored a darkness far deeper than mere ghosts. Strange noises echoed through the mansion, footsteps on creaking floors, whispers of unseen voices, and cold drafts that chilled their bones. Emma began to see fleeting shadows at the edge of her vision and hear soft singing in the dead of night. Lucas found old diaries hidden behind a loose panel, revealing horrifying details about the Greystone family's dealings with dark forces. As days turned into weeks, the couple's lives spiraled into a nightmare. Emma was plagued by terrifying visions of a pale girl with hollow eyes beckoning her to the forest. Lucas became obsessed with deciphering the diaries, uncovering rituals meant to bind a malevolent spirit to the house and grant the family unholy power. One night, Emma vanished into the storm, her cries swallowed by the roaring wind. Lucas searched desperately, but was drawn into the same darkness that had consumed the house's previous inhabitants. Alone and broken, he too disappeared without a trace. The Greystone house remained standing, a brooding sentinel over Black Hollow's darkest secrets. Visitors who approach report chilling sensations, ghostly apparitions, and an overwhelming sense of dread that lingers long after they leave. The house is a reminder that some places are touched by evil, and some darkness is never truly defeated. If you want to hear more true, disturbing stories of haunted houses and cursed places, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because sometimes the past refuses to stay buried, and the shadows wait patiently for the next victim after Emma's disappearance. The town of Black Hollow was gripped by fear and sorrow. The once hopeful couple had become yet another tragic chapter in the house's long history of suffering. The mansion, already infamous for its sinister reputation, grew even more foreboding in the eyes of the townsfolk. Rumors swirled that the house itself hungered for souls, feeding on the despair of those who dared to call it home. Lucas, desperate to find Emma, plunged deeper into the Greystone family's dark past. He discovered that the family patriarch, Charles Greystone, was obsessed with gaining immortality through occult means. Diaries and letters revealed that Charles had performed forbidden rituals in the basement, using his own family members as unwilling participants. These rituals, designed to summon and bind a powerful spirit, had catastrophic consequences. Instead of granting eternal life, they unleashed a malevolent entity that haunted the mansion, twisting the minds and bodies of the Greystone. The spirit thrived on fear and pain, growing stronger with each victim. Lucas became consumed by his search for answers, spending sleepless nights, poring over ancient texts, and attempting to replicate the rituals in hopes of controlling or banishing the entity. But the house fought back viciously. Doors slammed, objects flew through the air, and the oppressive presence grew unbearable. Neighbors reported hearing anguished screams and strange chanting echoing from the mansion. Some claimed to see ghostly figures wandering the grounds, or flickering lights dancing in the windows. The Greystone house had become a beacon for darkness, a place where reality itself seemed to unravel. One stormy night, Lucas disappeared as well. Some say he was claimed by the entity he sought to destroy, dragged into the shadowy realm lurking just beyond the walls. Others believe he remains trapped, a restless spirit doomed to wander the halls alongside the tortured souls of the past. In the years since the Greystone house has remained abandoned, its windows boarded up, and its gardens overrun by weeds. Yet the stories persist. Those brave enough to venture near speak of chilling cold spots, whispering voices, and glimpses of a pale girl singing a haunting lullaby in the night. The house serves as a grim reminder that some darkness can never be fully erased, that certain evils linger long after the last light has faded. Black Hollow's residents continue to warn outsiders. Stay away from the Greystone house, for it is a place where the past claws its way into the present, and where the line between the living and the dead is perilously thin. If you want to explore more true, disturbing stories from haunted houses and cursed places, subscribe and turn on notifications, because sometimes the most terrifying tales are the ones that refuse to be forgotten. The shadow of the Greystone house stretched long over Black Hollow, its dark presence seeping into the very fabric of the town. Over the decades, countless attempts were made to rid the house of its curse, but all ended in failure. The mansion seemed alive, a sentient entity that manipulated the fears and fates of those who crossed its threshold. Local legend held that the house's foundation was laid over an ancient burial ground, amplifying the darkness that Charles Greystone sought to control. Some believed the malevolent spirit was not a single entity but a fusion of vengeful souls, bound to the house by the cruel rituals of the Greystone family. Each generation that lived within its walls was drawn deeper into the nightmare. Emma and Lucas's arrival stirred the house's dark energy anew. Initially, the couple was enchanted by the mansion's grandeur and the promise of restoring its faded glory. But that enchantment quickly soured into dread. Emma's dreams were invaded by a pale child who whispered secrets in a voice like a broken lullaby. Lucas found himself haunted by visions of shadowy figures, their eyes hollow and accusing. One evening, Emma followed the haunting melody of that lullaby into the surrounding forest. The trees seemed to close around her, branches clawing like hands. She disappeared into the darkness, swallowed by the night and the curse that bound the Greystone legacy. Lucas's grief turned to obsession. He tore through the house's archives, unearthing horrifying accounts of family members who had succumbed to madness, vanishing, or violent deaths, each linked to the rituals performed by Charles and his descendants. The journals described how the family's desperation to control death itself had unleashed a power far beyond their understanding. He discovered that the basement held the key to a hidden chamber where the rituals had been conducted. The walls were etched with ancient symbols, stained by blood and the passage of countless tormented years. It was a place where time warped and reality twisted, where the veil between the living and the dead grew thin. Determined to save Emma and himself, Lucas attempted to perform a cleansing ritual found in one of the diaries, but the house fought back with unrelenting fury. Shadows writhed like living things, the air turned icy cold, and the spirit's voice filled the rooms with rage and sorrow. Neighbors reported hearing screams that chilled their blood, and some swore they saw flickering lights and ghostly apparitions darting behind broken windows. The house seemed to pulse with life, feeding off the terror it created in the final moments before his disappearance. Lucas sent a desperate message, a chilling recording filled with screams and cryptic warnings. After that, he vanished without a trace, swallowed by the darkness he sought to conquer. Today, the Greystone house remains a grim sentinel at the edge of Black Hollow. Its windows are boarded, its gates rusted shut, but the evil within endures. Locals avoid the place, sharing whispered warnings about the ghostly lullaby that drifts on the wind and the flickering shadows. Seen beneath the broken eaves, the mansion is a stark reminder of the dangers of tampering with forces beyond human reckoning, and the terrible cost of greed and ambition. If you are drawn to stories of haunted houses and cursed legacies, subscribe and turn on notifications, because sometimes the darkest nightmares are those written in history and lived in the shadows. Let's move to our 11th story. In the heart of the small town of Ravensbrook stood an old abandoned house known as the Whitmore Estate. The imposing structure was a relic from the 1800s, its Gothic architecture shrouded in creeping ivy and shadow. For decades, locals spoke in hushed tones about the house's dark past and the sinister events that had unfolded within its walls. They warned outsiders to stay away, especially after sunset, claiming that the estate was cursed. The Whitmore family had once been among the most influential in Ravensbrook. Richard Whitmore, the patriarch, was a wealthy industrialist whose fortune was built on ruthless ambition. His wife Eleanor was known for her cold demeanor and secretive nature. Together, they lived in the grand estate with their 2 children, Henry and Alice. Tragedy struck when Alice, the younger daughter, disappeared mysteriously one stormy night. Despite exhaustive searches, she was never found. The event shattered the family's reputation and left an eerie silence hanging over the estate. Soon after, Richard died under suspicious circumstances, his body found lifeless in his study, eyes wide with terror. Eleanor Whitmore, consumed by grief and madness, was rumored to have dabbled in dark rituals in a desperate attempt to bring her daughter back. Witnesses reported strange lights flickering in the windows and eerie chants echoing through the night. Neighbors claimed to see shadowy figures moving within the house, and unsettling cries pierced the stillness. Over the years, the estate fell into ruin. Attempts to restore it were abandoned after several mysterious accidents. Locals avoided the place, believing it to be haunted by restless spirits and dark forces. Stories circulated of people entering the house only to never return or coming back forever changed, haunted by visions and madness. In the early 2000s, a team of paranormal investigators, led by Dr. Sarah Matthews, arrived at the Whitmore estate. Determined to uncover the truth, they spent weeks documenting strange phenomena: cold spots, disembodied voices, and inexplicable movements of objects. Sarah's research uncovered old diaries and letters revealing Eleanor's descent into occultism, and the tragic attempts to bridge the world of the living and the dead. The investigators discovered a hidden chamber beneath the house, filled with arcane symbols, ritualistic artifacts, and unsettling remains. There, Sarah encountered a presence, an overwhelming force of sorrow and rage that seemed to bind the estate in eternal torment. One by one, members of the team experienced terrifying visions and attacks by unseen entities. Sarah herself faced nightmarish apparitions of Alice, her eyes pleading for release from a shadowy prison. The line between reality and nightmare blurred as the house seemed to come alive, seeking to trap the investigators in its malevolent grasp. Despite their efforts, the team was forced to flee when the malevolent force grew too strong. The Whitmore estate remains abandoned, a cursed monument to a family's tragic legacy and the dark secrets buried within its walls. Locals still warn travelers, stay away from the Whitmore estate, for it is a place where sorrow and evil intertwine, and where the past refuses to rest. If you want to hear more true, disturbing stories from haunted houses and cursed places, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because sometimes the darkest horrors are hidden behind familiar doors. The Whitmore estate's dark history stretched far beyond the tragic disappearance of young Alice. After that fateful night, the estate became a symbol of sorrow and dread. For the town of Ravensbrook, Richard Whitmore's sudden death only deepened the mystery. His lifeless body, found slumped over his desk, with eyes wide in terror, bore no signs of struggle or illness. Rumors circulated that his death was linked to the supernatural forces his wife had sought to command. Eleanor Whitmore, once the epitome of cold elegance, descended into madness in the years following her husband's death. Isolated within the decaying mansion, she was seen wandering the halls, muttering to unseen entities, and conducting strange ceremonies by candlelight. Servants fled in fear, refusing to return despite lucrative offers. It was whispered that Eleanor had opened a gateway between this world and the next, imprisoning her daughter's spirit in a place where light could not reach. Local children dared each other to approach the estate's wrought iron gates, but few could bear the overwhelming feeling of despair that hung in the air like a thick fog. Those brave enough to peer inside reported seeing flickering lights in the upper windows and hearing the faint sound of a child's lullaby drifting on the window. Melody both beautiful and hauntingly sad. In the late 1990s, urban explorers and thrill-seekers began to trespass into the abandoned estate, hoping to capture evidence of the supernatural. Many returned shaken, some with inexplicable injuries or tales of being followed by shadowy figures. One young man disappeared after spending a night inside, his belongings found scattered near the edge of the property with no sign of him. When Dr. Sarah Matthews and her team arrived, they came prepared with scientific equipment, hoping to separate fact from folklore. But what they found defied explanation. Temperature plummeted in certain rooms. Recordings captured ghostly whispers pleading for help, and cameras caught fleeting apparitions that vanished when approached. Sarah's research led her to discover Eleanor's secret journals, where the grieving mother detailed her attempts to reach Alice beyond death. The writings grew increasingly desperate, filled with occult symbols and references to rituals aimed at binding spirits. One passage spoke of a hidden chamber beneath the estate, a place Eleanor believed held the key to bringing Alice back. The team found this chamber concealed beneath the floorboards of the old library. Inside, arcane symbols adorned the walls, and remnants of ritualistic offerings lay scattered. The air was thick and suffocating, as if the room itself breathed with a malevolent presence. As Sarah stepped inside, she felt an overwhelming sadness mixed with rage, as if the very essence of the house was alive and aware. That night, Sarah was plagued by vivid nightmares. She saw Alice trapped behind shadowy bars, her hollow eyes begging for freedom. The house seemed to pulse with energy, its walls whispering dark secrets. Other team members experienced terrifying visions, faces appearing in mirrors, hands grasping from walls, and unseen forces pushing and pulling. The paranormal activity escalated rapidly. Doors slammed with violent force, lights flickered erratically, and the ground beneath the estate trembled as if struggling against the evil that had taken root. Sarah realized that whatever Eleanor had unleashed could not be easily contained. With heavy hearts and growing fear, the team decided to abandon their investigation. The Whitmore estate remained a dark monument, a prison of sorrow and malevolence. Its legacy was etched into the very stones, a chilling reminder that some doors should never be opened, and some souls never disturbed. Today, the estate stands, deserted, overgrown with thorny vines, and shadowed by towering oaks. The townspeople continue to whisper warnings, telling visitors that the Whitmore estate is a place where time stands still, and where the living can still hear the cries of the lost. If you want to uncover more true, disturbing stories from haunted houses and cursed places, subscribe and turn on notifications, because sometimes the darkest horrors hide behind the walls of forgotten homes. Let's move to our 12th story, in the quiet town of Ashwood. There was a house that had been abandoned for decades, a place the locals simply called the Holloway House. Nestled at the end of a dead-end street, the house was a crumbling relic of the past, its windows boarded and its yard choked with overgrown weeds. Despite its dilapidated appearance, the Holloway House was far from forgotten. Its reputation was steeped in dark stories and whispered warnings that chilled the bones of anyone who dared to speak of it. The house was built in the late 1800s by the Holloway family, who were once respected members of Ashwood's community. Thomas Holloway, the family patriarch, was known as a stern but fair man. However, behind the closed doors of the mansion, secrets festered. The Holloways were rumored to have been involved in strange occult practices, and tragedies seemed to follow them like a shadow. The first sign of trouble came when Sarah Holloway, the youngest daughter, was found dead under mysterious circumstances. The official cause was listed as suicide, but rumors suggested something far more sinister. Locals claimed that Sarah's spirit never left the house, and that her restless energy had cursed the property forever. As years passed, the Holloway house changed hands several times, but no one ever stayed long. Those who lived there reported strange noises, footsteps echoing in empty hallways, whispers from unseen voices, and doors opening and closing by themselves. Some spoke of seeing ghostly figures wandering the darkened rooms, their eyes hollow and filled with sorrow, in the early 2000s. A young historian named Mark Evans became fascinated by the Holloway house and its dark past. Driven by curiosity and a desire to uncover the truth, Mark purchased the property with plans to restore it. What began as a hopeful project soon turned into a nightmare. From the moment Mark stepped inside, he felt an oppressive presence. Shadows seemed to cling to the corners, and cold spots followed him from room to room. Late at night, he heard Sarah's lullaby drifting through the halls, a haunting melody that both soothed and terrified. As Mark delved into the Holloway family's history, he uncovered disturbing truth stories of forbidden rituals, disappearances, and madness that plagued the family for generations. He discovered a hidden journal belonging to Sarah, filled with frantic writings about a dark force that had taken hold of the house. Mark's investigation stirred the malevolent spirit that haunted the Holloway house. The paranormal activity intensified. Objects flew across rooms, mirrors shattered, and a chilling voice whispered his name in the dead of night. His dreams were invaded by terrifying visions of Sarah reaching out from a shadowy void, begging for release. Despite warnings from locals, Mark refused to abandon his quest. But the house's dark power grew stronger, feeding on his fear and despair. One stormy evening, Mark disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only his journal and a faint echo of Sarah's lullaby. The Holloway house remains standing, its windows dark and its doors sealed. The town of Ashwood warns all who listen to stay away, for the house is said to be a prison of sorrow and evil, where the past refuses to die and the living risk becoming part of its tragic tale. The Holloway house loomed like a forgotten monument. At the edge of Ashwood, its sagging roof and cracked walls, a testament to decades of neglect. The house's once grand facade had faded into decay, but its dark reputation was as vivid as ever. Stories passed down from generation to generation painted a picture of a family cursed by their own secrets, a curse that seeped into the very wood and stone of the estate. Thomas Holloway was a man of sharp intellect and stern discipline, but those closest to him whispered that his obsession with the occult had driven a wedge between his family and the outside world. The family's wealth and social standing couldn't shield them from the tragedies that unfolded behind closed doors. Sarah Holloway, the youngest of the family, was said to have been the most sensitive to the dark forces that had taken root in their home. Her death was shrouded in mystery. The official story told of a tragic suicide, but rumors among the townsfolk suggested something far more sinister. Whispers of a shadowy figure seen lingering near the house on the night she vanished, and strange symbols carved into the trees surrounding the estate. Some believed Sarah had been sacrificed in the small fog-lighting town that haunted the grounds, nestled deep within the misty woods. The Holloway house changed owners multiple times, known by locals. Each new resident was driven away by inexplicable occurrences. It had been the subject of hushed whispers and sudden gusts of wind glances a house that seemed to breathe with an unseen and the unmistakable sound of footsteps pacing the hallways. Many who passed its crumbling facade swore they felt cold fingers of dread brushing their skin by a child, and some claimed to have heard anguished cries like a ghostly echo. Mark Evans, the Holloway house was built full of optimism and determination by the Holloway family. A historian and researcher quickly became one of Gramore's most prominent families, the Holloway house. But the family's fortune came with a dark price. By uncovering the truth, stories told that the Holloways were involved in occult practices and restore the house to protect their wealth and status. From his first night, the house itself was said to be cursed. Mark felt the weight of unseen eyes watching him. No mortal should ever disturb. The air was thick with tension. The earliest recorded tragedy came when the youngest Holloway son. Objects shifted places, vanished without a trace, and sometimes faint whispers brushed his ears. His disappearance was followed by a wave of misfortune. His exploration led him to a hidden, sudden deaths, compartment behind a loose panel in the attic, where he discovered Sarah's journal. Left the town in despair. The fragile pages were filled with desperate pleas. Over the decades, the house sat empty, and fragmented accounts more decrepit performed to keep a dark presence. Local children dared each other. Sarah's writings spoke of a malevolent force that fed on fear and sorrow. Those who did told tales of ghostly figures watching from broken windows. As Mark immersed himself deeper into the house's grim history, and a deep, unshakable supernatural occurrences escalated. The early
Doors
1990s
slammed shut with terrifying force.
Mark
Cold,
and Emily Reynolds.
invisible hands
moved
gripped
to
him
Graymore,
tightly in the dead of
hoping
night,
to escape the bustle of
and his
city
reflection
life.
in the mirrors would
Drawn by the
sometimes
low-cost
warp
and
into
eerie
horrifying
charm,
visages.
they purchased the Holloway
His
house,
dreams became
ignoring
plagued
the
with
visions
visions
of
of
Sarah
Sarah
reaching.
At first,
Out from
the
a
house
shadowy
seemed really
void,
old,
her
and
eyes
in need
filled
of
with
repair.
silent screams.
But soon,
The townspeople
strange
grew
things
worried.
began to happen.
Friends and neighbors
Emily
warned
was
Mark
the
to
first
leave
to
before
notice
the
the
house
unnatural
claimed him,
cold
as
that
it had so
settled in
many
certain
before.
rooms.
Even
But his
during
obsession
warm days,
blinded him,
and
doors
he pushed
creaked
further
open
into
by
the
the
darkness.
darkness. Whispers,
On a night heavy
echoed
with
in
thunder
the
and
silence,
rain,
and
Mark
shadowy
vanished.
forms flickered just
Only his
beyond
journal
sight, remained behind.
Mark dismissed
Its
her
last
concerns
pages smeared
until
with
he,
ink and panic,
too, witnessed
the
objects
Holloway
moving
house
on their own,
stand silent
and
once
heard
more.
anguished screams in the
Its
dead of
secrets
night.
locked away behind boarded
One
windows
evening,
and
while
iron
exploring
gates.
the attic,
The
Emily,
lullaby still drifts
discovered
through the
an
night
old
air,
diary
a
belonging to
mournful
Samuel
reminder of the
Holloway.
pasts.
Its pages
Hold
were
on
filled
the
with
present.
frantic entries
Ashwood's
describing
residence
voices that
speak
haunted
in
him.
whispers,
Shadowy
sharing
figures
warnings
that
of the
whispered
cursed
dark
house,
secrets,
where the
and
living
a growing
risked
terror
losing their
he could not
souls.
escape.
For those
The
drawn to
final
tales
pages
of haunted
spoke of a
houses
ritual
and
meant to bind
malevolent
a shadow
spirits,
creature that
the story of
had
the
latched
Holloway
onto the
house
family,
is a
but
chilling
warned
reminder
that it could never
some
be
evils
fully
never
contained,
fade,
as
and
the
some
days
doors
passed.
should remain closed forever.
The Reynolds nightmare
If you want
worsened.
to uncover more
Emily
true
was
disturbing
plagued by
stories
horrifying
from haunted
nightmares
places
of being
and
dragged
cursed
into
homes,
darkness.
Don't
Mark
forget to
suffered from
subscribe
strange
and turn on
illnesses and
notifications.
Because
Their beloved
sometimes
dog
the
disappeared
most
mysteriously,
horrors
leaving
are
behind
those
deep
rooted in
claw marks
history
on the floor
and still waiting in the shadows.
One fateful night, Emily vanished. Mark searched frantically, following faint cries that led him to the basement, where the air was thick with a choking darkness. There, he encountered a monstrous shadow with glowing red eyes, a dark presence that snarled and lunged. Mark fled, slamming the door shut behind him, but Emily was gone forever. Years later, the Holloway house remains abandoned, its windows shattered and walls covered in creeping vines. Locals say the house hungers for new souls, and that those who enter risk losing their sanity or their lives. Visitors who dare approach the Holloway house at night report feeling icy hands brush their skin, hearing distant cries of despair, and seeing shadowy figures lurking in the broken windows. The Holloway house is a chilling reminder that some darkness cannot be escaped, and that certain houses hold secrets far worse than anyone could imagine. Following Emily's disappearance, the town of Graymore was gripped by fear and speculation. The once quaint community became wary of outsiders, and even more fearful of the Holloway house, which had become synonymous with tragedy and darkness. Stories of the house's curse spread beyond the town's borders, attracting the attention of paranormal investigators and thrill-seekers, many of whom were never seen again. Mark Reynolds, shattered by the loss of his wife, attempted to uncover the truth behind the house's malevolence. He combed through historical archives, spoke with elderly townsfolk, and scoured Samuel Holloway's diary for clues. He learned that the shadow creature Samuel had written about was believed to be an ancient entity, bound to the Holloway bloodline through dark rituals, meant to secure the family's wealth and power. The entity was said to feed on fear and despair, growing stronger each time a Holloway family member fell victim. Attempts to banish it had failed, and the house itself acted as a prison and a beacon, drawing lost souls into its dark heart. Desperate for answers, Mark sought the help of Father Elias, a priest experienced in spiritual cleansing and exorcisms. Father Elias arrived in Graymore with sacred relics and holy texts, prepared to confront the evil within the Holloway house. Together, they entered the decaying mansion on a moonless night. The air inside was thick and heavy, charged with an unnatural energy that weighed down their spirits. Whispering voices seemed to echo from the walls, and shadows twisted in unnatural ways. As Father Elias began his rites, the house responded. Violently, doors slammed, floorboards creaked under invisible footsteps, and the temperature plummeted to freezing. From the darkest corner of the basement, the shadow creature emerged, a towering figure of shifting darkness with glowing red eyes that pierced the gloom. The battle was intense. Father Elias recited prayers while Mark sprinkled holy water, trying to weaken the entity's grip. But the shadow fought back fiercely, howling with rage and attempting to drag them into its realm of eternal darkness. After what seemed like hours, the creature recoiled, forced back into the shadows. The house grew quiet, and a tense calm settled over the Holloway house. Despite this temporary victory, the entity was not destroyed. It remained bound to the house, waiting and watching for the next victim to draw into its cursed web. Over the following years,
The Holloway House continued to claim lives. Paranormal groups reported strange phenomena, objects flying through the air, ghostly apparitions of a woman in distress, and oppressive feelings of despair that left visitors trembling. Locals reinforced old warnings: never enter the Holloway House alone, never stay after dark, and never try to disturb what lies within. Today, the Holloway House stands as a grim monument to the dangers of meddling with forces beyond human understanding. Its broken windows and decaying walls hide a darkness that refuses to be extinguished. For those drawn to the macabre and unexplained, the Holloway House serves as a chilling reminder. Some places are better left untouched, some doors left unopened. If you want to uncover more true, disturbing stories of haunted houses and cursed places, subscribe and turn on notifications, because sometimes the darkest evils lurk right where you least expect them.